What's good, NBA fans? The NBA is back. I know I've been gone for some time, but I want to lock in and watch a ton of basketball. And in this action-packed episode today, we are going to be covering all 30 teams. That's right, all 30 teams in the NBA, and breaking down the biggest takeaways from opening week. I spent a lot of time watching basketball, seeing highlights, watching film for a lot of these teams. I want to address the good, the bad, and the ugly for all 30 teams in this episode. So if you're with that, if you like NBA content, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. More things will be coming on this channel as we get through this regular season. But let's start with the Atlanta Hawks. The Atlanta Hawks had a very interesting offseason, to say the least. This is a team that traded 3 unprotected first-round picks for DeJounte Murray. The opportunity did not work out. Trae Young off-ball did not look great next to DeJounte Murray. They really just took turns as a duo. So to move off of him for the lack of return that they got in getting Dyson Daniels, a lot of people had question marks about how good this Hawks team could be. And just through opening week, Trae Young is back. He looks a lot better. His shot motion is more consistent. He's back to doing 30 and 10. I mean, for Trae Young to put up 30 and 10 is pretty ridiculous. And through these first 3 games, he looks pretty valid. This is the guy that we look at to be a top 10 offensive engine in the NBA. Trae Young has absolutely been that for the Atlanta Hawks. Also, Dyson Daniels has looked very, very phenomenal. Jalen Johnson shows you time and time again why he's one of the most high upside young players in the NBA association period. Bogdanovich has looked okay. And all in all, this Hawks team looks to be a team that has a clear identity. We're going to focus around Trae Young. We're going to have length and size around him. Hopefully, this is the year that Onyeka Okongwu can officially break out as their legitimate 5-man, because he adds so much versatility when fully healthy in a lineup with Trae Young. And they just have a clear direction of what they want to do. Now, their number 1 overall draft pick, I think his development is going to be very huge this season. It's going to matter a lot. You don't see a lot of teams have a high draft pick with a player like Trae Young on the roster already. So the development and how that's going to look is going to matter significantly. But I think all in all, the Hawks are just an interesting, fun team, and they look a lot more fun. Like, things just make more sense. And Trae having the ball in his hands is the best thing for their offense. So like what I saw, hopefully we get a chance to see a lot more, but Trae Young absolutely is my biggest takeaway for the Atlanta Hawks in 2025. Boston. That's right. The Boston Celtics just look like world beaters. They picked up right where they left off. No Porzingis in the lineup, but Boston just simply continues to look like the best team in basketball. Opening night, the way that they massacred the New York Knicks, the way that they fought valiantly against the Detroit Pistons, the Boston Celtics just look like a very serious team that is on a high pace to win 60-plus games yet again. Jason Tatum to start the season looks phenomenal. He looks like he's in shape. Way more downhill from him. The shots are falling at a high clip for the most part. And again, they just been blowing out team after team after team. Their closest match was with the Pistons, but for the Wizards and the Knicks, they handled them by above 20 points. That's how good Boston is. And I just have to say, just seeing a roster constructed in this way, I keep saying with Boston, to trade Robert Williams and Marcus Smart for Jrue Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis is the ultimate needle mover move. But then to win the championship off the back of that, re-sign every role player from top to bottom, from Jason Tatum to Luke Kornet, fully on this team, just speaks to the continuity and chemistry that they have over the rest of the league, and also the math battle that they seemingly win every single night with the record-breaking amount of threes that they put forth as a team, and the process in how to get those threes. If you watch the Detroit game, when they were under pressure in the fourth quarter, the simple ball movement from Tatum, Brown, and Jrue Holiday, these are guys that are just so unselfish. They understand how to play for each other, and they play for the next play, and that makes them so much harder to beat and so much harder to defend. And even though the Detroit Pistons, which we'll get to later, to a lot of people might not be a great team, the way they played them was very, very close to competitive. They normally play Boston pretty close despite the talent gap. But yet in the end, Jason Tatum's shot making, the passing and ball movement from the entire team as a whole got them the win in the end. And they, once again, come out to look like the number 1 best team in the NBA. Shout out to the Boston Celtics. Let's see if they can successfully defend their championship this upcoming season. The Brooklyn Nets. This is a team that had the lowest win total coming to the season. I'm pretty sure their line was projected at 19 and a half wins. A lot of people laughed at this team. A lot of people said that this team was going to be one of the worst tank job teams in history. And that's still possible. This team could still be very, very bad. But from what I've watched of these first 3 games, the Brooklyn Nets have been competitive. They're not completely lost in terms of all these games. They just blew out the Bucks yesterday. That was a wild game to watch. They absolutely dominated the Milwaukee Bucks. But specifically what we're seeing is Dennis Schroeder having the ball in his hands as a reliable point guard for the Nets completely. Cam Thomas being the explosive 3-level scorer that we know him to be, where he's putting up 30-point games already at the beginning of the season. Just an insane scoring talent. And then you're also seeing the new head coach, Jordi Fernandez, really adopt the team to his type of play style and pattern, where they're more of a ball pressure type of team. And you're seeing results early on where Cam Johnson looks a bit more active in their offense as a downhill guy. You're just seeing them compete. And I think for Nets fans, even though they lost Kevin Durant and they lost Kyrie Irving and they lost James Harden, I think with this new rebuild iteration of the Nets, they're just looking for a clear path to rebuild, a clear path to understand what their blueprint is moving forward, and hopefully to get a high draft pick in this upcoming season. So for Nets fans, they probably want to lose as many games as possible, but this team at the very least is competitive. They're not getting 30 ball. It doesn't look like ugly effort. The effort from this team is showing up in all aspects. But I must say, Ben Simmons still continues to be one of the most underwhelming players in the NBA. He's still having problems where if he's in transition, he doesn't want to finish at the basket. He seems allergic to looking at the rim. There's still plays where he passes the ball when he's right under the basket for a finish. Someone passes back, then Ben Simmons winds up turning the ball over because they didn't expect the pass, because Ben Simmons is 6'10", and you would think he would finish the shot. But regardless, for Nets fans, that really doesn't matter. Ben is in the last year of his deal, so if there's any value that you can get from him, that's great. And if not, hey, it's the last year. It'll expire anyway, and Brooklyn is set to have the biggest cap space open for this upcoming season in 25-26. So, hey, Brooklyn Nets are pretty much on the right trajectory to get to where they want to get to, but it's a lot more fun than people thought it would be. I've enjoyed watching their games so far. Very, very close games overall. And again, blowing out the Milwaukee Bucks is no easy feat, especially for a team that does not have nearly the high-end talent that the Bucks do in the Brooklyn Nets. So, shout out to Brooklyn. The Charlotte Hornets. This is a team I'm so excited to be talking about because Charlotte is a team that had to rebuild essentially after the Kemba Walker days. They drafted LaMelo Ball, who has not been healthy for a good bit of his seasons. The Hornets have been this team that have kind of been at the bottom of the Eastern Conference for a while now. Obviously, the whole Miles Bridges stuff was going on, but this team officially revamped by taking Brandon Miller number 2 in a draft where a lot of people felt like Scoot Henderson should have went number 2, and we saw his breakout rookie season and maybe what that could translate for this upcoming season. But the star of the show has to go back to being LaMelo Ball. And we got to be honest, man, this season for LaMelo is a make or break season in terms of games played, showing us that he can be pretty much at that level. And as young as LaMelo Ball is, he's shown it. He's been crazy. He's been ridiculous. He's been a triple-double threat type of guy. And he's having consistent 30-point games with many made threes. What I love about this season so far for LaMelo is the creativity in the shot selection, the three-pointers, and him just really showing what his full talent can be, where his passes have been crazy, his burst to the basket looks better than ever before, and his three-point shooting, again, off the dribble, deep threes and all that. He's showing you what his high-end talent could be in the NBA. And more importantly, the Charlotte Hornets as a team are competitive. Once again, they're going wire to wire with the Atlanta Hawks where it comes down to the fourth quarter and LaMelo Ball has 5 fouls and they wind up losing that game, right? They're coming down to games where they're down in a rut against the Houston Rockets and they come back to win the game where Houston blows the lead and LaMelo Ball continues to look special. And this is with Brandon Miller getting hurt very early in the season. He should be back sometime this week, apparently. So the Hornets look fun. They look like a team that's going to be in the play-in, and I want to give a huge shout out to their coach with Charles Lee and his coaching staff. his first year in this environment as a head coach. He seems to be building very good culture. The entire team loves him. The energy is infectious and the atmosphere of what the Hornets can be. And it's just fun to watch. It's just very, very fun to watch basketball. I'm telling you, the Hawks versus the Hornets game was probably the best game of the regular season if we're just talking about competitiveness and energy from two-star electrifying players in LaMelo Ball and Trae Young. So seeing LaMelo stamp himself back into that conversation, hopefully he can have a healthy season to really be in that conversation fully. It's been fun to watch. Shout out to the Hornets. The Chicago Bulls. This is a team that a lot of people, once again, came into the season thinking they were going to be an awful team. And I get it, right? I mean, they trade DeMar DeRozan. Zach LaVine is an injury guy that was hurt for the majority of last year. They trade for Josh Giddey. They trade Alex Caruso away. A lot of stuff happened with the Chicago Bulls, and their future, quite frankly, is in flux, right? Is Billy Donovan going to get fired or not? These are questions we have to ask ourselves when looking at the Chicago Bulls. But so far, they looked okay. They've had a lot of spots where they look fun to watch play basketball. Seeing Kobe White hit that amount of threes and really take over versus the Bucks, who they also beat. A lot of people would not have had the Bulls beating the Bucks this early. Was fun to watch. I think it's going to be a very long season. Also, I think the biggest thing that brings me joy in watching them is seeing Lonzo Ball officially back on the court and seeing how he's able to impact the game as he works himself back from not playing basketball in 2 years. That's right. It's been a little over 2 years since Lonzo Ball last stepped foot in the NBA. So praying for him. Hope he has a very productive season. But this Bulls team is clearly a rebuild type of situation where they're trying to see the value of Josh Giddey, who's in a restricted free agency year. So this is a contract year for Josh Giddey. And just seeing Kobe White continue to develop on what he did last year. And also, to Zach LaVine's credit, he's been phenomenal so far to start the year, reminding people how good of a player he really can be, what his high-end talent is, because some of the talks around Zach LaVine have really not focused on just how good of a basketball player he can be in a vacuum. And his shot making and how electrifying he's been as a player has definitely showed up in the first star of the season. Now, obviously, I think if you're the Bulls, you're trying to find a way to get off of his contract long-term so you can officially kick in your rebuild fully and hopefully not have to attach assets to Zach LaVine. But in any case, if he stays on this team or not, I think the core of this team is interesting to watch. I think the way that they play in terms of trying to get uphill and down and forth and back and shooting threes, I think it's a very fun style for them to employ. Obviously, I think the funniest part about this team is the fact that Patrick Williams has so many possessions where he looks like Kawhi Leonard. The shot animations literally look like Kawhi. It's kind of crazy, but they're still a fun watch. I thought the Bulls would be a lot more harder for me to watch, but so far, I've actually watched their games the most of anyone. Pretty fun. We'll see exactly where this picks up for the Chicago Bulls this season. The Cleveland Cavaliers. After another year of playoff disappointments, we thought that this Cleveland Cavaliers team was going to completely reshift their roster. A lot of people said that Donovan Mitchell was not going to be a player to resign. He did resign. A lot of people thought that Jared Allen might have been traded. He got extended. He's still on this roster. And a lot of people thought at the very least Darius Garland, if all these things didn't happen, would be gone as well from this roster. He's also not gone. The Cleveland Cavaliers officially committed to their build, which they traded Donovan Mitchell to acquire, and they have all their players in place for at least one more season. And what you're seeing so far is the continuity is paying off. The Cleveland Cavaliers are 3-0. They're blowing teams out night after night after night. Evan Mobley looks much improved as an offensive player so far, and defensively they've been great. Jared Allen has had 83% field goal shooting for the field, which is wild. Darius Garland right now is 50, 44, 100. Obviously, very short sample size, but the Cavaliers have been taking care of business and been blowing out all the bad teams. And I get it. A lot of people feel like bad teams are bad teams. Why does it really matter if a team is beating bad teams? It doesn't really show how good they are. But I would argue that to consistently dominate who you're supposed to dominate on a night-to-night basis with the game not getting away from you or getting closer than what it should be speaks to just how good of a regular season team you can be. And I said coming in, I think the Cleveland Cavaliers have a great chance at home court advantage considering their continuity and also what their new head coach hire in Kenny Atkinson could do to maximize the roster and their guard play. And so far, we've been seeing a lot of good things from the Cleveland Cavaliers. They've been handling business. And for a team that a lot of people just don't really think too highly of, they've been that. They've been the class of the Eastern Conference outside of the Boston Celtics in terms of their record. How that will project during the season, we have to see. If that's going to hold up in the playoffs, we have to see that as well. But so far, the Cavs look fun. They're winning a lot of games. Donovan Mitchell still looks like a very good star player. And if Evan Mobley can continue to take that leap, this team could be in danger in terms of like dominating their conference, especially with the two-man staggers where you could have Donovan Mitchell with Evan Mobley and then have Darius Garland with Jared Allen. I just think there's a lot of things they can do fit-wise to make this team look very, very good. So far, so good. Job well done for Kenny Atkinson. Got to see how this maintains for the rest of the season. The Dallas Mavericks are interesting, man. This is a team that when you look at the Dallas Mavericks, they made a lot of moves in the offseason that shifted their finals course, where they got off of Derrick Jones Jr. They brought in Najee Marshall. As a Warriors fan, they signed Klay Thompson. Klay Thompson is officially a player that is on their roster. And a lot of people question how the fit in the backcourt is going to look like if Klay Thompson, Luka, and Kyrie Irving are going to be on the same squad. And I said that, yeah, the defense is going to have moments where it's a bit harder to see them having a bunch of success. But so far through those first two games, they looked okay. They've had some good spots. They've had some bad spots. Luka still looks like a very good player offensively. Klay Thompson is showing you the difference between him and Tim Hardaway Jr. with his shot profile coming down early, hitting big shots for them, shooting efficient from the three-point line. He's been very, very good so far for what the Dallas Mavericks probably expected. Now, obviously, it's only a 2-game sample size. We want to see how these things shift and improve. But in terms of the opening week expectation, the Dallas Mavericks have looked pretty cool. It's unfortunate how they lost to the Phoenix Suns, but it was a very close game. They stayed in it for the majority of the time. And I think as more time passes with the development of their players and the growth of their chemistry and continuity, the Mavericks could look like a more dangerous team because we understand what Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving can both be down the stretch when it's time to close out games. They've just been some of the most spectacular and electrifying players with the ball in their hands. And this roster still fits that exact identity in terms of what they want to get to. So Dallas is going to be interesting. I will be watching a lot more games this season. Definitely tune in. Shout out to the Dallas Mavericks. The Denver Nuggets are such a weird team, man. I think coming in, a lot of people had them as a top 4 to 5 seed lock because of Jokic and how good of a player he is, and they still had Jamal Murray, Aaron Gordon. Like, their core is still technically intact, but this is not the same team that we saw be a dominant regular season team. I think the shooting is of a concern. They really have like 2.5 real shooters on the team as a collective. And I think the Jamal Murray fall off, I think, in terms of production during the regular season, is kind of showing. I mean, he didn't really play well in the playoffs as much. Obviously, he was going through some injury stuff. He's never had a consistent all-star regular season from start to finish. He's never really been that type of player. And then overseas for Team Canada, he was playing really bad basketball at times too. And so far in this season, I don't think Jamal has still reached his peak. And that's why Denver only has 1 win. I mean, last night's game against the Raptors was a brutal game. They really could have lost that game, but, you know, heroics and whatnot, and also big-time shot making from Jamal Murray is a big part of why they were able to win. Also, the Westbrook factor is the thing to monitor with this team. He has not looked great to start overall, but he had some moments in the Raptors game. Let's see if he can capitalize and turn his season around there. But this is not a team that I look at to be like a true contender with the best of the best this year. I understand Jokic is the best player, but I still don't think that this team has enough consistently to be that level of playoff team. And I think getting through the regular season is going to prove to be difficult, but I still have Denver making the playoffs in some capacity. We'll see what they look like moving forward. The Detroit Pistons. Listen, as a Detroiter, I'm going to games. I went to like 4 or 5 games last year. This year I'm going to like 10 or 11. I am excited for Detroit basketball, and if you've watched the games to start, Cade Cunningham is breaking out. That's right. This is Cade Cunningham's year to officially take over in Detroit as a star player, where he can enter those talks with the other young players that are leaning towards the elite caliber. Cade's been phenomenal, man. The passing has been good. Still high turnovers, but he'll be able to bring that down probably in season, but the scoring efficiency is really what's been moving me. The way he's able to score in bunches, the third quarter that he had against the Pacers where he had like 18 points in the quarter, he is showing Detroit every bit of why he is that talented player, and they have to get more talent around him. And the shooting around Cade has been more improved. I like Jaden Ivey so far in terms of how he's looked, but as a collective, I still feel like this team needs even more shooting. Tobias Harris is awful. I'm going to just say it. A lot of people don't want to say it. I get it. He's a vet. I think that there's good value he can bring to a team in terms of locker room presence for sure. But on the court, Tobias Harris has not been good, man. And in a lot of these games, when it comes down to the stretch and they need a shot or two to go their way to have success, Tobias Harris has struggled. He struggled to beat Luke Cornett of the Boston Celtics off the dribble, and they lost the game. Detroit hasn't won a game, but they've been very, very competitive in all of their games still, which is a good sign for Detroit. Hopefully, they're able to convert these tough games to wins a lot more often, especially after Asura Thompson comes back. Right now, he's going through the blood clot thing, so things are a little bit murky there. But all in all, Detroit's going to be fun to watch. They've had some of the best games in the NBA to start the year, and I think that will continue moving forward. Golden State, man. As y'all know, I'm a Golden State Warriors fan. We know what time it is. The Golden State Warriors are a odd team. Preseason look very good. Obviously, we're in the regular season now, so no one's going to bring up preseason at all. But they look like a team that had a system where they were trying to get as many threes up as possible with the superstar player. And you basically have a top 10 defense, and that's their formula. And in the first two games, so far, so good. They ran a 12-man rotation. They got good efforts from their players, and they were able to blow out those two bad teams. But then when facing the Clippers, a better defense, they turned the ball over a ton. Kuminga did not look good. On the season, he has not looked good so far to start. Steph got hurt, which is going to impact exactly how many wins this team can get, how good they can be without Steph Curry. He got hurt super early on. So now it's like this team, in terms of how good they can be, was already in flux because of the roster talent. But now, with Steph being out, things look very, very doomed for the Warriors. But the one thing I am saying is Steph being out this early is forcing the young guys to step up. Jonathan Kuminga and Brandon Podziemski have to step up. Is B-Pods going to be Ben Simmons, or is he going to be closer to a guy that wants to get downhill more and create actions and have confidence in himself? Steph's not on the floor anymore, so there is no excuse for him to not have that green light offensively to be a better player. Also, shout out to the 2 games of Buddy Hield where he dominated. But I think in the third game, he also showed you he's a variance player. And that's fine. I think he's a very good player, and he runs so well off the ball, and actions can be created off of him for sure. But at the end of the day, we do not have a secondary creator at a high enough level for this team to be a serious team, for this team to be a contending team. So I'll be watching the games. Hopefully, they can win as much as possible, but that's my take on the Golden State Warriors. Houston, man. Houston has been such an interesting team so far as well. They have been in so many games where they have the lead. They don't know how to close out the league. Van Fleet or Dylan Brooks take ill-advised shots, and they wind up losing the game. Versus the Charlotte Hornets, they fumbled that lead. Last night against the Spurs, even though they were able to win that game, we saw them fumble the lead. Like, it's been very questionable. And also, shout out to Jalen Green. Jalen Green is a player that we spent a lot of time criticizing last year because he was not a consistent enough player for their standards in terms of what they needed. He wasn't good for a lot of the season. He had a strong March stint. But outside of that, didn't really show great consistent value. So far, he's had many nights where he looks like the best player on the team with Şengün on it, which raises questions about how they want to build their core moving forward, the moves they might want to make. It's going to be interesting for them to be a young team that can, potentially make some more shifts and make some impacts to their roster. So I'm going to be watching more of their games. Tari Eason changes a lot for their lineup. Again, they were like a top 7 defense and points per possession last year. This year, what they'll be with Tari Eason is very questionable. I can't wait to see exactly how this looks like for this team. But very young team, very fun team to watch. The Indiana Pacers, man, I got to say this. Tyrese Halliburton, you are on trial. I don't think there's any other way to put this. Tyrese Halliburton is absolutely on trial. Tyrese has been struggling for a lot of this season to recapture the glory that he was having when he first started his year last year, where he looked like an All-NBA player. And up to that point, once he got injured for the rest of the season, for the remaining 30 games, Tyrese Halliburton looked like a shell of himself. And then in the playoffs, Pascal Siakam and Andrew Nembhard were the main offensive focal points on the same team with Tyrese, where Tyrese just simply didn't have the burst, didn't have the consistent scoring threat that he wanted to be able to provide, and was more so passive as a playmaker. And I feel like so far in this season, it's been more of that. Although he's hit some big shots, I don't think anyone can deny he still hit some big shots. The game winner over Detroit stands out. But a game where you're going scoreless, where you don't score anything, the turnovers are higher than you expect from Tyrese Halliburton, it's been rough. And I think the Pacers offense as a whole is also looking different because of that. So when I'm looking at this and I'm just envisioning what the Pacers can be, I think they're far from what their ceiling is. I think the injury to James Wiseman kind of hurt their backup big rotation. At least that's what they hope to get from him. Hopefully he's able to get better, but they're in flux, man. And in the Eastern Conference that is so competitive, being in flux is not good. They don't have a reliable defense to really hold their hat on, so their offense has to be better than what it's been, and that starts with Tyrese Halliburton. So I'll be watching, man. This is going to be a very interesting season to see what this does for Tyrese in terms of his actual talks amongst the elite young guards in the NBA. The Los Angeles Clippers. Look, man, I feel bad for the Clippers because, A, they have one of the best home court environments now with the Intuit Dome. I have not gone to a game yet. I definitely want to go to a game sometime this year if possible. I will travel because it looks amazing. The wall is a thing. The fans are getting into it. It's vibrant. It's loud. It's fun. It's just a very fun situation. But Kawhi Leonard has not played for this team yet. The lawsuit that's coming out where allegedly after Kawhi Leonard tore his ACL, he was supposed to rest like 725 days or something in that range. And they brought him back too early on the injury. And they were faking medical documents. I can't speak to that because it's not 100% true. But for that to come out, we don't know about the status of Kawhi, if he'll even return to basketball this season. And that's rough because this is a guy that we know at his best is one of the best players in the league. And with James Harden next to him, I think the vision for the Clippers was going to be have a top 10 defense. Right now, their defense looks legitimate. They look good. And then offensively, you have Zubac as your big who can dunk the ball athletically and also feed off of mismatches. James Harden being your primary playmaker. And Kawhi Leonard being your go-to scorer. It made sense. They've been holding down the fort without Kawhi Leonard. They look a lot better than people thought they would be. I don't think it's really a surprise. We talked about it on the pod with Locked On Clippers. Shout out to my guy Dime Dropper. But yeah, man, they're an interesting team to watch. But in terms of their total wins and how that tracks out for the season, a lot of their success is going to be on if Kawhi Leonard can come back. So I'm looking forward to it. We'll see what happens with them. But they've been very fun to watch. The Los Angeles Lakers. I got to say, man, Darvin Ham to me was not a good coach. I said that multiple times. But the fact that the difference is this big is hilarious to me. JJ Redick comes in. A lot of people criticized JJ early on because of the podcast with LeBron and the fact that he didn't have any head coaching experience, all this and all that. But the one thing I kept saying about JJ is you might question his people skills and how he can lead a locker room. But in terms of knowing basketball, JJ Redick is one of the smartest basketball brains in the NBA. He's a basketball sicko. If you heard his podcast and the details that he would always harping on, he clearly understood the game at a high level. But we know coaching the game at a high level and understanding it at a high level are two different things. So far, he's completely revamped the philosophy of what this team is. He's unlocked Anthony Davis more. The ball is finding him way, way more. And LeBron has been in coast mode to start the season, but that's okay because he's not asking LeBron to go out here and give him 35 points a game. He's building a functional offense that has a ton of intentionality and optionality within it, where Austin Reeves is also being unlocked as a player more. So the Lakers have been fun to watch, man. And I think during the season, they're going to be better than a lot of people thought they would be. myself included. I think Jaden's been a phenomenal coach, at least so far. It's early. These are my first impressions, but shout out to the Lakers, man. They look good. Also, Rui Hachimura is looking good, and they need to trade D'Angelo Russell. I think that's the biggest X factor for their team. If they're able to turn his salary into something that is very productive and viable, this team could be a much scarier team in the Western Conference. The Memphis Grizzlies. Memphis. Listen, man, I'm a fan of Memphis. They proved me wrong a couple seasons back about how good they could be. And I think that same thing can be proven again. But it's going to be a different type of season. No Gigi Jackson to start their year. Jaren Jackson Jr. just came back recently. But they also just lost to the Bulls last night. And they've had some good wins and also some bad losses. It's a bit confusing as to how good Memphis can be. But I still think that at full strength, Ja Morant being back can get them into the playoffs for sure. Bane has looked good still in terms of his shot making. Jay Huff, a guy that a lot of people didn't know, has been really, really cooking as their backup big in spots. Santi Aldama has also looked good as well. So there's some things to write home about for Memphis. Obviously, the Zach Edey stuff, he's young. He'll be able to figure things out more. But it's been very interesting to monitor, to say the least. But they still have some of these games where they're blowing the leads or they're in dogfights with teams that they probably should just flat out beat. So it's going to be interesting to monitor, but the Grizzlies are still going to be a very good team, I believe. We'll see how this shapes out for them for sure. Miami, man. Miami has been such a weird team. Again, we have another weird team. This year is just going to be a year of teams like this, where they start out the year, they get blown out by 20. The D-Wade statue is so kooky and off, and there's a lot of memes and jokes about it. Tyler Hero and Terry Rozier take over the game with Jimmy Butler to get them the win against Charlotte. Bam Adebayo plays a much more improved game as well versus the Pistons. There's just a lot of interesting things and tidbits with this team. A lot of people didn't know where to put the Heat because last year they weren't that great during the regular season. And then in the playoffs, obviously there was no Jimmy Butler. So a lot of people are iffy, but this is still a contract year for Jimmy Butler. Bam Adebayo is coming off of one of his best seasons and hopefully wants to take that leap again this year. So there's a lot at store for this Miami Heat team, but they got to prove it to a lot of people. And so far, outside of the big blowout loss at the beginning of their season, Miami hasn't looked bad. I think they're going to be able to figure out a lot of their issues and weak points as they progress throughout the season. But shout out to them. What you did to Dwayne Wade was wrong, though. We got to fix that, Miami. That wasn't a good look. Milwaukee. Okay, is it time to hit the panic button? Because I've watched like 4 games now. They have not looked good. Their offense has not looked the greatest of fits. Dame and Giannis said before the season that they did not really spend time working out together during the offseason. Giannis was overseas. Dame was doing his thing. So that hasn't happened. Chris Middleton has not suited up to play a game for them yet, which unlocks so much for them as a tertiary scoring option. Their defense still has not looked great. The adjustments haven't been good, and they're losing to teams that a lot of people would deem as bad, where the Nets blow you out. The Bulls also beat you. It's just looking like a rough situation for the Bucks, and they just lost to the Celtics. Doc Rivers, after taking over from Adrian Griffin, is still under 500. Like there's a lot of question marks and pressure being applied their way, and rightfully so, because this is a team that traded their assets to get Dame, and one of those assets went to Boston and made them the class of the East. So the Bucks are in a weird spot to start the season. How that manages itself out during the regular season, it's going to be interesting to watch, but they've been very underwhelming to say the least, at least off of my opening week expectations and my watches. Minnesota Timberwolves, man. As y'all know, I had a lot of Karl-Anthony Towns stock. I went to a playoff game last year for Minnesota. They were just a fun team overall to watch. They trade Cap. They trade him for Dante DiVincenzo and Julius Randle. And a lot of people don't know exactly how to rank them. I was a bit lower on them in terms of their ceiling being as high without Karl-Anthony Towns. But there's some room for optimism, I would say, for this roster. Julius Randle as a passer downhill has been pretty good for them outside of the debut game. I think Anthony Edwards and his aggression going downhill has been a pretty good thing for them as well. Dante hasn't exactly found his stride yet, but it's still super early into the season. These things will happen. Unfortunately, I'm not sure if Jaden McDaniels is going to take the offensive leap that I keep projecting him to take. I thought he would take it last year. He didn't. Maybe this year he's able to do it more, but a lot of it is just not hesitating on shooting the three. I think this team is in a spot where they can still be a good regular season team, but in terms of their ceiling, I do think the ceiling is lower. Kind of want this team to be a Harden team if they want to try to move Julius Randle's contract, but that's a whole other conversation. At the end of the day, they've been cool to watch. Let's see exactly how they build off of these good habits on and on. We'll see. Oh, man, the New Orleans Pelicans are still one of the most confusing teams. I know I'm saying this for a lot of teams, but that's how confusing the NBA is right now. New Orleans is a team that didn't have Zion for their first game, loses DeJounte Murray to a hand fracture early in the season, and now they're shorthanded. Yves Misty had a pretty good game as they're really only big, but how reliable that will be for the entire season, we don't know. Herb Jones and Trey Murphy are going to play much more elevated roles. And Brandon Ingram's looked good to start the season, but at the end of the day, is Brandon Ingram going to look good in that role next to Zion? How do you make that fit to the best of its ability? Also, I talked about this on the pod with Chris. Jordan Hawkins has to be a player that's elevated in their lineup because of his shooting and what he brings to the game. And that has been such a big core part of their early success in some of these games. How that shakes out when everyone is healthy is the interesting question we have to ask ourselves. Are they going to consolidate some talent to make this roster more complete? We got to see. But I've liked what I've seen from the Pelicans as well so far. A lot of people just didn't have them in the running at all because it's such a hard team to rank when you consider the ball usage of all of these guys. But we'll see how it shakes out for sure for the New Orleans Pelicans. Oh, the Knicks. The Knicks have been a very, very interesting team. I think last night Josh Hart got hurt. They lost against the Cleveland Cavaliers. But the Knicks have been a pretty interesting team to watch. Obviously, they trade Julius Randle for Karl-Anthony Towns. They don't have their big Mitchell Robinson back until the new calendar year in January, potentially. And there's a lot of question marks. Specifically, Mikal Bridges, if his shot is broken or not. He started out the year questionable with the hitch, but so far he's found a bit more consistency in his jumper. But I think all season long, his play is going to be a big thing that they need to rely on. Also, the injuries. If anyone else gets hurt, like if Cat goes down or if OG goes down, how limited their depth options are. Deuce McBride is their sixth man and might be a sixth man of the year candidate with how much they need his threes because they don't get up enough threes as a team still. Boston decimated them in large part because of that. So, interesting team. I had them as a team that was closer to contender status than not, and I still think that's a fair take. But we have to see how this evolves during the season. Their defense and their offense haven't been quite in sync to the highest level that they would like it to be, but it's still very early in the season. We got to see how these things shake out. Oklahoma City. Listen, shout out to Sam Presti. Shout out to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. They're absolutely dominating the Clippers trade that they made for Paul George. They have done a great job with that. They look like the class of the West, man. They look like the only team that can actually go toe-to-toe with Boston in a competitive playoff series. At least right now from what we've seen in the regular season, they've been great. Shai's been good, but the answer, like the biggest thing for them has been Chet. Chet's been lights out, man. Lights out. Scoring, super duper efficient. The rim protection has been great. He's been consistent. He's playing all of the games, the passing. And just as a core, like this unit is just terrifying. Also, Jalen Williams, once again, his mid-range shot continues to be one of the most consistent, effective go-to shots in basketball right now. He's been great. So I think when you look at Oklahoma City, it's clear that their ceiling is championship. And how they progress throughout the regular season, how they get comfortable with different lineups or rotations is really going to be their thing to prepare for the playoffs. But OKC is very good, man. They're very, very good. They will be the number one seed in the Western Conference this year, more than likely. And I'm having a lot of fun watching them play basketball. So shout out to the Oklahoma City Thunder. Not much to say when you're just that good. Orlando Magic. I'll say this right now, man. Paolo looks good. I'm sorry. Last night he had 59 and 13. I can't believe it. They start out the year blowing out the Heat by 20 points. Jalen Suggs, after his extension, looks like a very good basketball player. The defense that he played in that game, in all their games, period, has been sensational. Also, the offense has been there for Jalen Suggs. Anthony Black taking that step for the Magic to really be that guy to play hard and well has been a very good thing to see, because they really need another guy off their bench to be able to do that. He's been able to do that so far. And maybe down the line, Jett Howard is able to crack this rotation with his shot making and what that can do to impact their lineups. KCP has been solid as well, but I just think the inner development of their guys is showing right now. They look to be a legitimate, scary defense, and they look to be a team that's a playoff lock damn near. So shout out to them. Paolo is taking that star leap as well. Again, 59 and 13. To be that young doing that is crazy. He had 37 at the half. That was a wild game. The Magic are going to be a fun team to watch. I'm locked into Magic hoops. For sure, y'all. Lock in on them. The Philadelphia 76ers. The Philadelphia 76ers are an interesting team. Because, again, they haven't had any Joel Embiid. They haven't had any Paul George. They've been running off of Tyrese Maxey being their number one guy, Kelly Oubre being their number two guy in shots, and Andre Drummond giving you good value while Joel Embiid has been off. But we know when they're fully healthy, on paper at least, this is a different team. They just are. Embiid has not suited up to play yet, so not really much to say based off of their beginning parts. Tyrese stepped up very, very big against the Pacers to help them tread water, but they got to get healthy, and we got to see that soon, because these wins or these losses at the beginning of the season are important to establishing cushion or lack of cushion for the rest of the year. So I'm really looking to what they're able to do from this point forward. Phoenix, man. The Phoenix Suns have been such an interesting team. I keep using that word a lot, interesting. I know. Y'all can chill on me. But the Phoenix Suns with Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, and also Mike Budenholzer have had a pretty good system offensively. They've allowed a lot of teams to come back. They've blown some leads. The fourth quarter still have not looked great from them. But that was a promising win last night that they had versus the Lakers. KD and Booker definitely look good in spots for sure. And specifically, Ryan Dunn has been everything for them as a guy that came in not expected to be able to be a shooter, but a guy that's knocking down shots and playing very good defense. His wing defense has been spectacular all season for them. So for them, it's about building up on these good habits, executing better down the stretch so teams don't come back against you, and just having more success. That's what I want to see from this Phoenix Suns team. We'll see how all these things shake out, but they've been fun to watch. I still think they're going to be a high-win team in the West, but the blown leads and reversion to isolation basketball at times kind of does scare me a little bit about this team, but they're fun. The Portland Trailblazers. Scoot Henderson is figuring things out. He's had moments where he's looked good. He's had moments where he has not looked good. They are a fun team to monitor, mainly because I think DeAndre Ayton has to go. I said this in the Portland podcast. DeAndre Ayton, to me, is not a impactful enough player for the Trailblazers. His effort and also his productivity, regardless of effort, wanes from game to game. And I personally think that Donovan Clingan is a guy that gives you so much fundamentals on all aspects for what they need from the big position that he should probably play. But obviously with the price tag that is being attached to Ayton, they would have to trade him for something to make it make sense. And right now, going through all the teams, there might be a trade out there, but it's highly unlikely at the moment. They're not a good team. They're just trying to figure things out. Chauncey Billups might get fired pretty soon during the season. But outside of that, I mean, you hope that Anthony Simons can stay healthy. You hope that Scoot Henderson can stay healthy. And they need to get Shaedon Sharpe back to keep adding to his development. So that's really it for Portland. They'll be a fun team to monitor, but they're definitely a team that is chasing the Cooper flag sweepstakes for sure. The Sacramento Kings. I'm a little nervous about the Sacramento Kings, if I'm being quite honest. DeMar DeRozan has looked pretty solid as their Iron Man, but Fox hasn't been as great as we know he can be. Sabonis has been pretty consistent in his role as well. Keegan has had some good spot moments as well, but I think as an offense, this team hasn't been as consistent as they can be. I don't think we've seen that fully. And I also think that down the stretch, they had some moments where they've struggled to get to what they want to get to. The huge run that they gave up to the Lakers in the second half of the game pretty much decided the game for the Lakers over the Kings. Their defense still not having enough reliability on it is going to really impact their whole season. But I think when things are figured out and Fox catches his rhythm, having a guy like DeMar who can be a stopgap player, who can be your next consistent scoring option if Monk and Fox don't have it, is going to prove to be a very important piece for their team. And I still think Keon Ellis is going to also impact this team a lot defensively. So there's still a team that you have to watch out about. They're still going to be fighting every night for their playoff lives. The Kings are also still going to be fun. They're just a high-paced, high-offense team, but figuring that out structurally is their biggest question of the season to me. The San Antonio Spurs. Okay, Victor Wembanyama is amazing, but there are concerns, I would say. Like the high amount of turnovers. We didn't talk about it last year because he was a rookie, but that was a thing. That's following him a lot now, where he'll post up teams pretty much double hard, and when they do that, he turns the ball over because he's a big human, and when you put that many people around him, he can lose the ball rather easily. I think Chris Paul's done a good job of finding him a bit more, but I think his shot diet and where he's going, you want to see that really improve at a higher level for sure when I'm looking at this team. They're not that good of a team. I'm sorry. Like they're just not. People saying that they saw this team winning a high amount of games in the West. I don't think so, but I think this is an important year for development for a lot of their guys. Also, they're playing right now with no Vassell. Once Vassell gets back, I think shot quality for Victor should look improved, and a lot of things should just get better by adding a more talented player back into their lineup rotation. Sohan hasn't been bad though, so I do think Sohan deserves a lot of credit for how he's been playing, but not a great team, and we'll see exactly how they grow in season. That's really the beauty of watching their team this year. But shout out to Victor. He is definitely a generational talent. We will be locked in. The Raptors have had a very hard start to the season. Scotty Barnes has been going through some things. Last night he got hurt, unfortunately, which is tough for him. But Scotty Barnes, I think, is still going to have a big year. I think he's very important to what the Raptors want to do. I don't think this team is going to make the playoffs. I think they're going to be in the fight and hunt to do it. But with RJ coming back, maybe I'm wrong. We have to see how that looks. Emmanuel quickly going out due to injury early is also a questionable concern. But they just haven't really performed like a great team. Unfortunately, last night they couldn't capitalize on the win over Denver, where they pretty much outperformed them for all of those quarters. But at the end of the day, the development for this team should be fun to monitor, win or loss. So I'm excited for that. I will be watching more Raptors games. Tap in. The Utah Jazz. Okay, Taylor Hendricks. I feel so bad for him that he broke his leg. Not sure how long he'll be out. Probably the majority of the season if he broke his leg. That's really sad to hear. His development really moved me as something that was super important for this team. It's very unfortunate, but we will be monitoring that for them. Lauri Markkanen continues to be such a great player, but he's on a team that isn't that great. And I think that some of his passing limitations do hurt him in comparison to the rest of their roster. Keontae George is a player that might look rough now, but has a lot of bright spots and can figure things out during the season. At least that's what they're hoping for. And maybe Utah becomes a team that is a seller at the trade deadline, because a lot of teams are interested in the services of Walker Kessler and how that shapes out in their rotation. So I'm curious about what the Jazz are able to accomplish based off of their development this season, but I will be all eyes on this team. And that brings us to the last team, the Washington Wizards. The Washington Wizards are fun, man. They've been a bit up and down at times, but obviously their talent pool is because of that. But I've watched all their games. Jordan Poole is having a revenge season. He leads the team, I'm pretty sure, in steals, assists, in three-pointers made right now. He's been playing lights out basketball. The dagger three against the Hawks last night was huge for his confidence, I'm pretty sure. Kuzma going out is a little bit tough for them. Also, are they going to trade Kuzma or not this season? It really feels like he's going to be gone mid-season this year. And also the development of Alex Sarr. I think Alex Sarr, while he's looked rough, if you just go by box score, I think the defensive motor with the blocks and steals has been there, honestly. And I think the more development that he gets, he'll look even better in his role as the rim protector for this team. So I'm very locked in to see what they're able to turn into as we progress throughout the entire regular season. But Jordan Poole looks fun. He makes these games very exciting. Also, the growth of Bilal, Bub Carrington. There's a couple players that are super interesting, but make no mistake about it, they're still not going to be a great team. I'm pretty sure they're chasing the Cooper Flag aspirations for this year. But the games are fun to watch, and that's what I care about. So those are my takes on the Wizards. And all in all, that is my first impression of all 30 NBA teams. Super long video. Took me a lot of time to get out, but I wanted to make sure I got it out today. Appreciate all of the love from you guys. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We got a lot more videos on the channel that will be coming. I watch basketball pretty much every day on my playback.tv/giftedhoops. It'll be in the description box below, so tap in there. We're going to be watching basketball all year long. But peace out, people. Have a good one. Don't overreact too much, but we're happy that the NBA is back. Peace.